Well, hello there, friends and family. I do hope this video finds you all well and safe at your homes. But so much has happened since we've talked since last Friday. Here, this is the first day I've been able to get out of the house since last Friday. We had storm fronts move back in, and it's been pretty much raining since then, at least 80% of the time. And what time it wasn't raining, it was just heavily overcast and rather dark and gloomy. It's almost as if the earth itself has bowed its head and was crying. It was definitely not uplifting, because that's all we've had this winter. December was 10 times wetter than normal. January and February, probably 4 times wetter than normal. And it's really put me behind on things I need to do outdoors. And if I showed you the yard, you'd understand that. But I'm not. But I'm sure, as all of y'all know, numbers in America have continued to rise exponentially. In fact, the curve, the number of cases, as well as the number of deaths, is starting to approach vertical. And that's not a good thing. And we still have 3 states leading that way, with New York State being first. I think when I came out to start talking to y'all, New York State had 25,000 confirmed cases. I don't remember the amount of deaths. California was second. Washington coming in third. Other states, they're climbing as well. And my state of Alabama here, we're at 251. And if you remember back, it wasn't this past Friday, but Friday a week before, that we didn't even have a case in Alabama. We wouldn't get our first case till that Saturday. So it's been a little over a week, and now 3 days, and we're up 251 cases. The sad part about all that is we've only tested 2,321 people in a state with a population of 4.6 million. So I'd have to think that it's probably 100 times more than that. And that may be what's happening in the states where you live, as well as the countries you live. So none of us know, but I haven't left my little piece of ground. And I hope out there, those of you who can, and those of you with underlying health conditions, seniors, you're doing the same thing. For those of you who can't, I'm praying for you. And I sure wish everybody'd pray for you too. But there's just been, other than the numbers, there's been a lot going on. And a lot of what's going on has really frustrated me. And I've been spending a lot of time watching it. And I'm sure all of y'all are aware of what's going on in our House of Representatives and our Senate. They've been trying to pass what they call the coronavirus relief bill. You know, it's that bill that's supposed to put checks out to Americans. It's supposed to give assistance for small businesses and other businesses, allocate funds for hospitals, protective gear, it's all kinds of stuff. Well, they've tried to pass a bill in the Senate twice now, since last Friday. And it failed on Sunday, and it failed again yesterday. Then the House of Representatives, they come up with a bill over 1,400 pages long. That had all kinds of stuff in it. And I'll say this, I'm not political. But we're dealing with a crisis and a pandemic. And every time we have a crisis in America, whether it be a self-made one like the financial crisis or a natural disaster, our politicians, both sides of the aisle in the middle, take that opportunity to jam stuff in these bills, knowing that the House and the Senate has no choice but to pass them. And they're doing that right now. And as me walking out here, they were still debating the Senate version of the bill on the Senate floor. Of course, if you go up to C-SPAN, you can watch it yourself. Is that Senate packed with senators? No. It looks like a ghost town. But the same's true for the House of Representatives. There's a few people walking around. That's it. I just cannot believe what our elected officials are doing. And then something that was very disappointing to me, and very alarming, I might say, is the coronavirus task force briefing that came out yesterday afternoon. It was late coming out, around 5:30. And during that, the president, he wants America to return back to work, because, of course, this is having a huge impact on our economy. And here again, this ain't political. This ain't about Trump. This ain't about Republican or Democrat. This is about what they're trying to do. And he just went on and on about we have to get the economy restarted. We got to get people back to work. And I get that. The economy is important. Then he started talking about, 98% of the people who get this will be just fine. It's only the 2%. And I'll put a link below this video, so by all means, I want you to watch it, so you can form your own ideas and opinions. Just don't gotta take mine for it. But I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe that we have come to that point in America, and this is what I feared most of all, that we would make the trade-off, that we as a country would say we were willing to sacrifice the vulnerable people in America. Well, if some people in America get their way, that's exactly what's going to happen. Because even today, there was more talk of this. And it's just not the president. It's some governors. It's some senators, some Congress people. But all the time, the doctors aren't saying that. But the way the numbers are escalating, the way we're seeing videos and news reports now of our healthcare workers pleading for more supplies, we're nowhere near that stage of even contemplating that. But that's where we are today, on Tuesday, March the 24th. And like I said, that's what I feared most. Never in all my days would I have thought this was possible. I even struggled with coming out here and doing this video. and talking for you a bit, let you enjoy the sounds of the birds and the sunshine. Because I know some people are just so entrenched in their politics, they just, I swear to God, they'd follow one side or the other regardless of what they wanted. But you know what? I'm not that type of individual. I've always believed in you do the right thing. I still believe that. And I'm still trying to hold out hope that we as America will do the right thing. But I don't want to beleaguer that fact a lot. I do want to go in, chat with y'all a little bit while we all sit down at the computer, enjoy a snack and a cold drink like normal, go over some numbers, go over some things that have happened, talk about a little bit of what I know from my local area. And as always, I'm sure all of y'all will add to the value of this video in the comments below. But with that said, I think I'll take y'all inside. My throat's a little dry. We'll get us a cold drink, snack, we'll sit down and take a look at the current situation. Not only in America, but in the world as of today, March the 24th. So y'all stay with me, okay? So y'all, here we are. We're back in the house and you've got your cold drinks and your snacks. Hope you're comfortable. Now what we're going to be looking at here is something I want you to understand before we continue the rest of the conversation. We're at the Worldometer website, which tracks the number of coronavirus cases worldwide. And I'm here for this website because it deals with data rather than giving you a graphical representation like the Johns Hopkins website does. So you can plainly see there's 421,413 cases worldwide, 18,810 deaths. We have 108,388 recovered. Here on active cases, there's 294,215 active cases still in the world. 5% of them, 13,269, are in serious or critical condition. Now that's remained fairly steady. Something else I'd like you to note here is we have over to the right closed cases. Now closed cases comprise those that are recovered and discharged, and unfortunately those who die. Because truthfully, that's the only two choices you have. You either recover and you're discharged, or you die. Based on the data, this myth that there's some great portion of people out there in the world that have actually been infected by the coronavirus and have either shown no symptoms or such minor symptoms that they didn't even know they had it, that is still unproven. No country, not one, to include the United States, has been able to verify that fact. Not at all. Maybe in time we will. But what the note here is, of the 127,198 cases that have closed, out of that 400 and some odd thousand that are still going, or total confirmed, 108,388 of them have recovered and been discharged. That's 85%. Unfortunately, of that 127,198 closed cases, 18,810 people have died. That's 15% of the closed cases. Now, that's what I'm saying. All we can do is deal with the data. We know confirmed cases. We know the number of active cases. We know the number of serious and critical cases. We also know the number of recovered or discharged cases and the number of people who died. And 15% to me of all closed cases, that's extreme. And that's something no one on the face of this planet is talking about. But that's the reality of it. If you come down to the deaths here, and here's the total cases on the left, total deaths on the right, you can see the graphs are very similar. They're almost vertical, folks. If you remember back in the earlier times of this outbreak, when it was primarily in China, this is what it looked like. Then as Europe and the rest of the world was infected, it straightened out and started to head more vertical. And now it's approaching becoming a straight vertical line. And all that means is it's now confirmed. We are in exponential growth. Not only in the United States, not only in many of your countries, but in the entire world. Now yes, China does appear, if you can trust them, to have it under control. So now we come down here where the numbers come in. And this is the numbers for right now at 8 p.m. on March the 24th. The main reason I'm here is so we can do a few calculations, use math, because that's what you do with data. And what I need to have you understand is, for what we'll be discussing later in the video, is what some refer to as the death rate, others refer to it as mortality rate, and medical professionals, healthcare professionals, epidemiologists, and the likes tend to refer to it as case fatality rate. And in reality, that's exactly what it is, because what we know, without speculating, is we know what the total cases are, and we know what the total deaths are. Now here what you'll see for every country in the planet. And what I'd like to add is it's now in 197 countries. It's not in 140 or 150 as mainstream media and a lot of our politicians are saying. I don't understand how they can be so misinformed. It's right here. The same is true, though slightly lower, on the Johns Hopkins website. But that's because Johns Hopkins website only uses confirmed data from the CDC. And the CDC is lagging way behind. For whatever reason, and it's been this way since the start. Unless the CDC can confirm it, it's just not real. It's been that way from the start. But what I want you to understand is the case fatality rate. If you want to call it the death rate, that's just fine. And that's simple to calculate. I've got a little calculator here. And what you do, and we're going to do China first, because that's we have the most data on. Now, that data might not be correct. China could be lying. A lot of people say the numbers aren't. But we don't know that for sure. All we know is what the numbers are. So it's simple. You take the total number of deaths, which in China was 3277. You divide that by the total number of confirmed cases, which was 81,171. And you get a case fatality rate, or death rate, of a little over 4%. Now if you take Italy, Italy had 6,820 total deaths. Divide that by their 69,176 confirmed cases. And poor Italy has a case fatality rate of 9.8%. Yep, over 2 times that of China. And I want to stop there and explain a few things. Now we all know, especially if you've been following this from the beginning, China took steps the likes of which modern man has never seen before. On January 23rd, they did a full lockdown quarantine of Wuhan, China. 11 million people. That wasn't telling people to stay inside or we'd like you to be inside. That was ordering their people to do it. Not only did they do that, they shut down all travel in and out of the city. And by all, no one in, no one out. By car, by truck, by bus, by train, or plane. All of it. That's not what Italy did. Even when Italy, and I did a video on that, even when Italy did their supposed lockdown at first, they weren't totally locked down. They were allowing people to come and go for work, and whatever reason. Still a lot of things were open. Now Italy is in a total lockdown, or so they say. But you can see what's happening in Italy. They got a death rate of 9.8%. They've got 743 new deaths today. Now you're going to come down to where I live. The USA. And we currently got 698 deaths. And we're going to divide that by our confirmed cases. 53,655. And you're going to see, wow, we only have case fatality rate of 1.3%. Yes, we do right now. And that's where people's memories are only about a week or two long. In the beginning in China, just like the beginning in Italy, Spain, and so many other countries where this started to be an outbreak prior to the U.S., their death rate or case fatality rate was very low too. But over time, it increased. Now there are some exceptions to that. One of notable that you will see here is Germany. Germany only has 159 deaths. And they have total cases 32,991. Which gives them a case fatality rate of nearly 0.5%. Wow. That's amazing. Now, nobody's sure right now why that's happening. Nobody can say or give a reason for it. Some think, and what I've heard and what I've seen and read, that the only explanation is because of Germany being able to get them to medical care quickly, and that they have an adequate number of ventilators to use on their patients from the very start. Whether that's true or not, we'll only have to see if this holds out as time goes on. And another country with a very low case fatality rate, of course, is South Korea. They only have 120 deaths, and they have 9,877 total cases. So they have a 1.2% case fatality rate, 1/10 lower than the U.S. Nothing like Germany. But something I want to bring up right here, I want you to remember these numbers, especially the U.S. at 1.3 currently. But part of the way China contained this is not only did they lock down Wuhan, over the coming days and next week or two, they locked down 760 million people, over half of their population. Everybody in their country was wearing a mask. The quarantines were strictly enforced. Wearing masks was strictly enforced. Now many of you are going to say, well, our CDC and other Western developed nations, CDCs and health officials say masks don't help. That's true. The surgical masks have very little protection, and I've said that in a past video too. They do not give you the protection that you need to keep you from being infected by the virus. That's not their purpose. Their purpose was to keep people from spreading germs and viruses to others in hospital environments such as surgical wards. Same reason in dentist's office. That way, the health professionals can't spread germs to the patient. It works the same for viruses. All Asian countries, the one thing they're doing differently than the Western developed nations are doing, is they're all wearing masks. And something I noticed the last few days that I've watched some videos that came out of China, they're still wearing masks. Every last person. And I seriously believe that if we could somehow convince our government to allow everybody in America to wear a mask and mandate it, I think that would go a long way to controlling this in America. But we're not going to go there. We can't even get our people to stay home like we've directed them to. But we'll talk more about that later. The whole purpose of coming here was so you would understand the death rate or case fatality rates, because that's going to be so important to what I'll be talking about next. So the second point I want y'all to understand is what the federal government has done to this date. And I'm not talking about passing bills for relief for that. I'm talking about actually done to help contain the spread of the coronavirus throughout the U.S. And many of you may know this, many of you may not. But if you've been watching the White House press briefings from the Coronavirus Task Force, then you probably know about the 15 days to slow the spread. Now, was this law? Was this mandated by executive order or executive action and signed into law? No, it wasn't. Was this passed into law by the Senate and Congress? No, it wasn't. All the 15 days to slow the spread were guidelines. That came out on March the 16th. And let's take a look at what they meant for all of us here in America. Here they are. The new recommendations are simple to follow, but will have resounding impact on public health. While the President leads a nationwide response, bringing together government resources, private sector ingenuity, every American can help slow the virus spread and keep our most high-risk population safe. The first one was listen to and follow the directions of your state and local authorities. Duh. I think all of us are doing that because we're not getting much from the federal government. Number 2, if you feel sick, stay home. Do not go to work. Contact your medical provider. Okay. 3, if your children are sick, keep them at home. Contact your medical provider. The 4th, if someone in your household has tested positive for the coronavirus, keep the entire household at home. That should be obvious, folks. And then the 5th one, if you are an older American, stay home and away from other people. And I think most of us are that can. 6, if you are a person with serious underlying health conditions, such as a significant heart or lung problem, stay at home, away from other people. Now, that was a little bit slim because we all know now it's not only heart problems, lung problems, it's diabetes, hypertension, and like I've said in past videos, it's also people who are recent cancer survivors and those that are going through treatment for cancer right now. But the 15 days to stop the spread was the entirety of what our federal government, and it's not just the White House and the President, folks, it's our Senate and our Congress. This was the entirety of what they came out with to stop the spread in the U.S. They did not come out and say, okay, we're going to close the schools. They left that to the individual states. They didn't come out and say, okay, we're going to shut down all restaurants and bars and just have it be carry out and take out. Nope. They left that up to states. And it goes so on and so on. Now some states like New York State and California have taken more extreme measures. They have stay-at-home orders in place now. And this 15 days to slow the spread has not worked in America so far. Yes, a portion of America has followed these guidelines. Another portion of America has not. Now in New York State, California, Washington State, and other states, they have implemented a lot more extreme plans, like stay at home except for essential trips. Essential trips being buying food, medications, medical care, checking on the elderly in your families. But as a nation as a whole, we have no central directive. Nothing has been put in place. And the reason this is so important is because it, along with knowing the mortality rate, or the death rate, or case fatality rate, however you want to do it, you need to know these things to know what happened on Monday during the White House Coronavirus Task Force meeting with the President, the Vice President, and William Barr was there, our Attorney General, as was Deborah Birx. And we're going to head there now. And we're going to talk about what was just said on Monday. Because it was Monday that I was in utter shock and dismay and found that press briefing to be the most alarming I'd heard to date. So let's go there now. Now, here we're at, and this is a video, and I actually watched this live. This was the White House Coronavirus Task Force press briefing that was held Monday, the 23rd. And like I said, I watched it live. And I would encourage every one of you who stumbles across this video or follows my channel to take, and I know it's an hour and 49 minutes long, but I would encourage you to watch this. Now, you've probably seen snippets of it and outtakes of this on a lot of different mainstream media channels. But see, that doesn't give you the whole gist of what happened. And here again, during this briefing, you'll hear several times brought up the 15 days to slow the spread, which were guidelines. They were not mandates or laws. But the one thing I want you to see right here is there's one very important individual missing for the very first time since this task force was created in all the press briefing. That person is Dr. Anthony Fauci. And if you don't know who Dr. Anthony Fauci is, he is the director of our Institute of Health for Allergies and Infectious Diseases. He is considered one of the top experts in America and the world, and he has held that position under the administrations of 6 presidents. The man is highly respected, considered to be the one person that knows the most about this. But he's not here today on March 23rd. And the reason he's not here is because him and the president had a sort of disagreement, you might say, or butting heads in the previous White House Task Force press briefing. And this came about because the president was touting his hopes, desires, and expectations for how well chloroquine, which you probably all heard about it, was a game changer and may even be possible a medical miracle to helping us fight the coronavirus. And our president, he was very hopeful, and I understand. And this is never kicking the president or the Republican Party. Like I said, I have no political agenda. I really don't care about all that now. This ain't about politics. It's about saving Americans. So he's got to project something hopeful. So he was all in to this chloroquine, which is a very old, I think it's 80-year-old malaria drug. And it was shown to have some success in a very small study done in France that only included 26 patients. Of those patients, half seemed to get better. The other half did not. One of the 26 left the study before it was completed, and one died. That's the facts. So, there's no way of truly telling based on that if chloroquine is of any advantage in treating the coronavirus or not. And when the press asked for Dr. Fauci's take on it, he came out and did the right thing. I'll give him that. I'd give him a hug if we weren't doing social distancing. He came out, he confirmed, just what I told you, plus he said, it needed to be trialed. 1, to know it was safe. 2, to know it was effective. And he did not see it as being such a gleaming hope, let alone a miracle, as the president had. And this continued on throughout the previous White House Corona Task Force press briefing. To make matters worse, after the briefing, at some point in time, the press asked Dr. Fauci again, and they asked him a question, and they sort of trapped the man into this. They asked him why he didn't stop the president from saying some of the things he said that were inaccurate. And Dr. Fauci, again, being honest and being a man, and I gotta say this, he is one, he told him, what can I do? I can't step up there, grab the microphone away from the president. I just can't do that. And he's right. He can't. But Dr. Fauci, he has my admiration because he is one of the few that is willing to stand up and tell not only America, but the world just how it is. Now, why is all this important? That gets back to him missing right here. And when I saw Dr. Fauci wasn't here at this press briefing, I knew what he had done and said and contradicted the president in the previous briefing had caught up to him. And that's why he's absent, because he stood up and spoke about reality and truth, just like I do, regardless of the consequences to the channel, my subscription base, or actually me personally. But during this White House Task Force press briefing, the thing that shocked me and was very alarming is what the president was going to say so many times during it. Now, if you watch this, and I hope you do, I hope you watch his intro statement, and then you can go to the question and answers, because it's there where he reveals his thoughts, opinions of what we should be doing. But the whole gist of it was, and he said this many times during this press briefing, we are not going to let the cure be worse than the problem. Can't do it. So what did he mean by that? Well, the cure is shutting down the country, shutting down our economy. People stay home, they stay in place, they limit all outdoor activities, they limit going away from their home except for essential trips, that being food, medical, similar to what China did, but they enforced it. Similar to what Italy is going through right now. and as well as Spain. Both Italy and Spain had to make the decision to finally lock their countries down. But the president's right. That's going to have a devastating effect, and is having a devastating effect on the American economy. Millions upon millions upon millions of Americans are now out of work. And I understand. They're all scared, they're worried, how they're going to pay their bills, how they're going to buy food. God, I understand that, because in my lifetime, I've been through that 4 or 5 times myself. Through recessions that somehow I got unlucky to just be in the wrong job at the wrong time. So I know what they're going through. But his whole gist of this particular press briefing was the cost of the economy over the cost in human life. And what he said was, at the end of the 15-day period, we will decide which way to go and open back up our country based on the recommendations. Now, when pressed by reporters and that, he said, well, it's not the whole country, but there are areas in this country right now that have very few cases. Certain states do. And he named them off. There were states like North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, and he went on. But the whole point is, we all know this, or I think we all do. Every state started with one case. That's how it started in Wuhan, China. One person got infected. And that one person started this whole pandemic. It's the way it always is. It's called patient zero. And the fact that New York is the epicenter now, with over 25,000 cases in New York. Then there's California next, Washington next. Well, Washington was the first state. California, they're growing too. Will they become New York state? Only time will tell. But every state will have a huge increase in cases before this is over. But the president's point during this Monday briefing was, we have to get the country back working. And like I say, so many times he brought up the fact, we can't let the cure be worse than the problem. There were times when he talked about the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, the Dow. I don't think any true American is really overly worried about the stock exchange, the Dow, or the NASDAQ, except the wealthy and elite. I may be wrong. I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments. And then he made a statement, we are going to save American workers and American companies. No time during this press briefing on Monday did he say, we are going to be saving Americans. We are going to be saving our most vulnerable with underlying health conditions. No time during this press briefing did he say, we are going to be saving our seniors with underlying health conditions and our elderly. No. What he did say, and this is a quote, we are going to save American workers and American companies. Well, it was that one statement that balkanized this entire press briefing for me. Because in my mind, I then knew where he and our federal government stood in relation to the cost we're willing to pay as a nation to get past this and get our economy back running. Now you might wonder, if you're looking over here to the right, this is Deborah Birx. Did she agree with it? Well, she tried her best to steer around what the president was saying. And she said they would look at the data, they'd advise the president. Even the president said, come this next Monday, which is when, and that's why I wanted you to know, the 15 days to slow the spread, that's up on this coming Monday. And that's when, during this press briefing, he said a decision would be made. And I'm not saying he said that we'd open up the country and take all restrictions off. And that's where it's so important to watch this whole press briefing instead of watching snippets, or even to take my word for it. And the only reason I know that his entire focus was about the economy and getting America back to work was after watching 1 hour and 50 minutes of it. But Deborah Brick, she tried her best to work around it, and she never rightly came out and totally agreed with it. Now, what she did say, that 80% of the mortality coming out of Italy right now was over 50, and those people had underlying health conditions. The same was true in Spain. I'm not sure what her point was. Because, see, my point is, we can't sacrifice those people. You know, that's my daughter, my grandson. That's me. That's all of y'all's grandparents. Your mothers, your fathers, your aunts, your uncles. Are we willing to do that, America? That's my question. And that's why I freaked out after watching this. And I have watched this press conference here multiple times. But the president's opinion is he thinks America has learned so much during the 8 days we've already been practicing, the 15 days to slow the spread. He thinks we know all about social distancing now, and we're practicing it. He thinks all of America is staying 6 feet apart. He thinks all of America is keeping their hands washed. He thinks all of America's not gathering in large groups. Well, that's just not the case, and we saw this past weekend. In fact, it was so bad in New York State and New York City and in California, where both Governor Cuomo in New York State and Governor Gavin Newsom had to have a press briefing and come out Sunday afternoon, neither of which was happy about what they had seen going on in their states on Saturday and Sunday up to the time they held their press briefings. Because what both of these governors saw was Americans out, gathered up in large groups, packed together in outside recreational areas, outdoor markets, farmers markets, or what have you, playing team sports, and pretty much life was going on as normal. And I thought Governor Cuomo was going to just freak out. And he made it clear what was about to happen. In fact, he said right there on that Sunday press briefing that he had already contacted New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio and told him he had to have a plan of what they were going to do to get the situation under control in New York City within 24 hours. And if he couldn't, then he would. And I think all of you, if you were out Saturday and Sunday, hopefully you weren't contributing to this problem. You probably saw this as well. I know for a fact I took a drive here in my little small town. It's pretty hard to tell that we've done anything at all to contribute or try to control the spread of this virus. And that is sad considering the high percentage of seniors that we have here in my small town. Now the president went on to say also in this press briefing that if it were up to doctors, they'd shut down the country for 2-3 years. Well, that told me again that was frightening, that he was not taking the advice of doctors like Dr. Fauci or like Deborah Bricks right here, and so many others that are tasked with advising the president. Or otherwise, why would he say that? And then he went on later during the question and answer, and it starts about 1 hour and 12 minutes, to talk about whether it's worth shutting down the entire country, destroying our magnificent economy. Never before seen in America, never before seen in the world, strongest in the world, and I get all that. But he talked about the mortality rate, where he says, we all thought it was going to be 3 or 4%. Now, they're talking it could be under 1%. But folks, I've done showed you, and that's why it was important to let you know what the mortality rate was. It's 1.3 currently, and it's early into this epidemic in America. And that's the way it always is. It's very low at the start. Is it worth it to us? Should it? Let's say it stayed at 1.3. Do any of y'all know what 1.3% of the American population is? Do you? But let's quickly do a little bit of that math. Like I said, we're projected to be 360 million at the completion of the 2020 census, right? And we're going to multiply that by 1.3%. This is what I want all of you to understand what he was talking about. And it's just not him. There are others. There's a lieutenant governor from Texas saying that he's willing to sacrifice his life so he can pass on in America that we had prior to the virus. Now, I'm not willing to die for that. Maybe some of you are. But anyway, my point being, let's just say it remains at 1.3% case fatality rate. Okay? We will lose 4,680,000 Americans. Of those, that will be people, regardless of what age, that have underlying health conditions. That will also be people that are the elderly and seniors that may or may not have underlying health conditions, but those who do are the most susceptible group to die from this. So is that what we're going to do? For the sake of our economy, are we willing to sacrifice 4.6 million Americans? That's why this press conference was so alarming and so shocking. Now, like I told you, it's just not the President of the United States. It's not just our Senate. It's not just Congress. Here is this person. He's the Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick of Texas. And what he says right here, the Lieutenant Governor says U.S. should get back to work. President eyes Easter return. And I'll go over that because the President, as of today when I was putting this video together, the coronavirus task force in the White House had another press briefing. But what the Lieutenant Governor here says, the Texas Lieutenant Governor said Monday night that the U.S. should get back to work in the face of the global pandemic, and people over the age of 70 who the Centers for Disease Control say are at the higher risk for coronavirus will take care of themselves. Really? He's willing, and he's willing for the nation just write off those 70 and older and let them take care of themselves. Republican Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick made the comments while appearing on the Fox News Tucker Carlson tonight. Let's get back to work. Let's get back to living. Let's be smart about it, Patrick, 69, said. And those of us who are 70 plus take care of ourselves, but don't sacrifice the country. Patrick went on to suggest on the show that there were lots of grandparents like him, that he doesn't want the whole country to be sacrificed. Health experts have made it clear that unless Americans continue to dramatically limit social interaction, staying home from work, and isolating themselves, the number of infections will overwhelm the healthcare system, as it has in parts of Italy, leading to many more deaths. While the worst outbreaks are concentrated in certain parts of the country, such as New York, experts warn that the highly infectious disease is certain to spread. With lives and the economy hanging in the balance, President Donald Trump said Tuesday he's hoping the country will be reopened by Easter, as he weighs how to refine nationwide social distancing guidelines to put some workers back on the job amid the coronavirus outbreak. I would love to have the country opened up and just raring to go by Easter, he said during a Fox News virtual town hall. Easter is just over 2 weeks away, and that's April the 12th, folks. The U.S. is now more than a week into the unprecedented 15-day effort to encourage all Americans to drastically scale back their public activities. The guidelines issued by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are voluntary. Think about that. But many state and local leaders have issued mandatory restrictions in line with, or even tighter than, those issued by the CDC. I gave it 2 weeks, Trump said during a virtual town hall from the Rose Garden. He argued that tens of thousands of Americans die from the seasonal flu or in automobile accidents. He actually said the same things in his Monday coronavirus task force meeting. And we don't turn the country off. We'll assess at that time, and we'll give it some more time if we need a little more time. But we need to open this country up, he added. We have to go back to work much sooner than people thought. For the most people, the coronavirus causes only mild or moderate symptoms, such as fever and cough. For some, especially the older adults and people with existing health problems, it can cause more severe illness, including pneumonia. Worldwide, more than 375,000 cases have been reported, and while most people recover in weeks, more than 16,000 have died from the virus. Now there in the ending of this article, that was all President Trump during his coronavirus task force meeting that he held Tuesday afternoon, today, at the White House. So that's my point. You get his drift. Now he did back up from making the decision on this coming Monday to now thinking Easter would be the appropriate time. And I think you get what I'm most concerned about. But not only he, but this Lieutenant Governor, Governor Dan Patrick, are willing to sacrifice for the sake of the economy. But for me here personally, in the state of Alabama, it gets even more worse. Let me show you what our governor had to say in the state of Alabama, and I hope it's not that way for whatever state in the U.S. you live in. So now we're here at WSFA 12 News. This is our local channel here in Montgomery, Alabama. And this is Governor Kay Ivey. It says the state needs to strike a balance between economy and public health. And she said this today at 5:55 p.m. while I was working on this video. Governor Kay Ivey and State Health Officer Dr. Scott Harris spoke to media by phone Tuesday afternoon about the continuing coronavirus pandemic. Ivey said her priority is keeping the Alabama economy going while taking extraordinary measures and keeping everyone healthy and safe. We have no extraordinary measures here in the state of Alabama. In fact, restaurants, bars, and what have you actually voluntarily closed before Dr. Scott Harris even advised the state that they should do that. There are no mandatory restrictions in my state in Alabama. There are recommendations, people. And Governor Kay Ivey went on to say, I know that business in your communities are really feeling the pinch and maybe feel hopeless when it's hard to see an end in sight. But I want to echo the president who said today, we have to get back to work, she said. We must do everything we can to keep business open, and if they're closed, get them back up as soon as possible. Let me tell you something about personal consequences to me. My son has a small business, and for over 2 years now, he's worked real hard, and it was extremely successful. And his business is on the verge of closing in the next few days. He won't be able to make payroll. He won't be able to continue. So it's not like I or my family aren't making severe personal choices to try to counter the spread of the coronavirus in America. We are. The safety and well-being of Alabamians is paramount, she said. I don't understand how a politician can say that. Just like that's why I was so shocked by President Trump on Monday's press briefing and then his press briefing Tuesday, where he switched gears some, and he came out at first, and I was thinking he'd changed his total mind, where it's all about the safety and well-being of Americans first. But as it continued on, he went back to the whole same thing. We have to get the country back working. We have to get it back working soon to save the economy. And he wants to do it now by Easter. He thinks that's going to be the perfect time. I don't know what more to say. Just like here. That's why I said it's just not only the president. It's the lieutenant governor of Texas. It's my governor in the state of Alabama. And when she was asked if the state should be focused more on stopping the spread of the disease or the economy, Ivey said the state should be focused on both. And this is what the president said. He said we can do both. No other country has come up to that conclusion. Not China, not Italy, not Spain, not Germany, not South Korea, nobody. However, I agree with President Trump, who thinks that a healthy, vital economy is just as essential to our quality of life. Manufacturers and businesses that are producing the medicines, protective health equipment, and the food we need, it's a balance. We're trying to strike the appropriate balance as we move forward. Harris said the state is preparing for many different scenarios in relation to the virus, including a surge in hospital patients. A group has been meeting to discuss solutions, but a concrete plan is not yet in place. It's like I told you folks, we ain't done jack in Alabama. Nothing's mandated, it's just recommended. I certainly am not sure if we're doing enough or if we're doing too much when it comes to this response, because it's very difficult to look in the future and know what we're going to see in a few weeks, Harris said. We're certainly trying to make the best decision we can with the data we have available. It's possible we'll end up looking like we didn't do enough, or it's possible we'll end up looking like we overreacted. And at this point, we're doing the best we can with the information we have. Ivey said again that the state has no plans to issue a shelter-in-place order. She was asked if the state is planning on an economic recovery package for business and citizens. The answer to this question is dependent on the economy and the economic forecast. But there again, it's about keeping Alabama businesses open and running. And if we enact a shelter in place, it will further impact our economy, Ivey said. Well, you see here, folks, this is why I am so alarmed and so shocked. It's not only the president. It's not only that lieutenant governor. It's not only some senators and congressmen. It's also the governor of my state here in Alabama that is willing
to sacrifice Alabamians for the sake of our economy. I couldn't make that sacrifice. I'm going to tell you what, in my lifetime, there have been times, albeit I was a younger man, where I had to make a decision. It was the hardest decision in my entire life. But I didn't make it over money or dollars. I made it because I thought what we were doing was to protect Americans, to protect our way of life. That's what I thought. So the whole purpose of this video, and I'll also link the President's White House Corona Task Force briefing today. We'll just go look at that while we go ahead and finish up this video. I know it's got long, but I'm not going to apologize for that. So like I said, while I was putting this video together, the President and the White House Coronavirus Task Force came back on and had their briefing for today, Tuesday, March 24th. And you can see right there, as President Trump steps up to the podium, Dr. Fauci is back in the briefings. Now, I totally thought he would be, because I can't imagine the amount of grief that the President was given for him not being present on Monday's press briefing. So he's back. But just like the governor said, and just like Lieutenant Governor said of Texas, the President's now wanting to not get us all back to work and that this coming Monday, but now the target is by Easter. Will that be enough? And if it's not, will then be made the decisions that we're willing to sacrifice those with underlying health conditions, regardless of age, because that's who's dying? Are we willing to sacrifice our elderlies and senior Americans, 60 and above? Are we willing to sacrifice those that are seniors with underlying health conditions, which are the #1 category for dying from this? And I guess it basically comes down to this, people. Are you willing to sacrifice your grandparents, great-grandparents possibly, which may still be alive for many of y'all, your parents, your aunts, your uncles, sisters, brothers, or other loved ones that have underlying health conditions for the sake of the American economy? I'd like to know. I'd like to know in the comments what you're willing as a person to do to save the economy of America and the almighty dollar. This should be interesting. And like I've always said, the comments always make the video that much more interesting. And I look forward to seeing your comments and reading them from both sides of this. And I'm sure they'll be varied. And as always, I'm going to leave links to all the resources I used in the production of this video. And I encourage you to watch the White House Task Force briefing on Monday and this one here that was going on just before I started to complete this video. And you can read the articles that I leave behind. That from the Lieutenant Governor of Texas. That from my own state's governor. But I know it's not all the states. Because I know, as I was finishing this video up and took a break, Governor, but Governor Cuomo out of New York, he was not willing to make that sacrifice. And he said so in his press briefing. And I commend him for that. So this is where I want to leave you, America. Are we willing as a country to sacrifice our family members, our friends, to this? Are we willing to sacrifice those that came before us and built the nation that you now have? And I granted it's not perfect, but millions, maybe billions of you would not be now able to stand and criticize it if it had not been for the generation before you. Think about what you're going to lose. Think about the cost. And comment below the video. As always, y'all, till I see you on the next video, I want you to take care, stay safe, and I mean this sincerely. God bless each and every one of you, your families, your friends, and loved ones. And may we all bow our head at night and pray for each other as a people, as a planet, and as America, that we can come through this, not only together, but with some semblance of humanity. With that, I bid you goodbye for now.